So it's such a pleasure to talk to you. And I want to start this off with talking about the differences in like hand to hand sales and like doing big business like you're doing today. What is the difference between winning a customer and winning a contract?
Realistically, to me, they're the same because it's about relationships. It's about people trusting you, people believing that you can deliver the product that they want. So to me, whether it's a small or big, project or winning a customer, the dollar size doesn't matter because to that person, whatever dollar amount they're spending is a lot to them. But it's really about trust. It's really about relationships and trust.
To that end, I was reading your story. Like you started with a team of three people, doing concrete foundations in underground in Atlanta, and I think about when I read that part of your story. 4% of black-owned businesses still today just about have employees. 96% of our businesses have little or no employees. Like nobody's on the payroll. So entrepreneurs, sole proprietors, and etc. How did you figure out how to scale? How did you figure out how to go from three people to 60 plus people?
That's almost like a trick question. And the reason I say that, you got to think about when I started my business, I was 31 years old. I'm 68 now. I had no idea. Sometimes you start businesses and get into things because you're just so naive. If I knew all that I know now back then, I don't know if I'd have did it. I didn't realize the wear and tear of making payroll, the responsibility of other people. You eat what you kill, so you're constantly on the hunt. Um, I'm glad I was naive because if I knew the wear and tear and what it took, I wouldn't have done it. I'm not gonna lie.
No.
I, I probably wouldn't have done it. It would have been too scary.
Yeah.
It would have been too overwhelming and too scary. And then once you're in, I had to feed my family,
Yeah.
so I couldn't quit. But there are many times I wanted to quit because it takes a lot. It really does.
Yeah, I'm living that life right now, and what's so interesting is I learned this one principle that I hold dear to now. I wish I would have learned it earlier, and I'm going to ask your thoughts on this. Is if I would have learned to reinvest the money earlier, I would have been much better off. And so because I wasn't taught business growing up, you invest $10 and you get back 20. Now you go spend that extra 10 when you could have put that money back in and made the thing bigger. And so the thing I learned was about reinvesting the profits. What lessons have you learned about growth, about business growth, that might have helped you along the way?
I was fortunate. Even though my dad was not a business person, he was a professor and then vice provost at the University of Michigan. My dad grew up, in the Depression and, things were tight and grew up very poor in Louisiana. He always taught me to save. He said, I don't care if you save but $10. So when I started my business, which we started undercapitalized, like all of us pretty much do, whenever I made a few dollars, I was scared to spend it. I did reinvest it and make sure I could take care of my family. So my dad also taught me always live beneath my means. So that way, if you run into tough times, your life style doesn't really have to change. So since I've been in business, we've lived beneath our means. We've always tried to make sure we saved. And starting a business broke and very little capital, to me, I was always scared to go broke. So I was a little different. You got to remember, I started in the 80s. I'm 68 years old. Life was a little different. There was no social media, no internet and stuff. So a lot of the flash you see today, we didn't see.
Yeah.
You might see it in Ebony or Jet magazine, but that was about it. So I just always had the rainy day mentality as far as saving and especially being an entrepreneur.
To that point, do you think that what we're being sold on social media actually hurts us and harms us in our journey of entrepreneurship?
I think social media has its great benefits, but I also think if you believe everything you see, it can't hurt you because you think you should be at a certain point. I'll give you a good example. When I went, I'm a graduate of Morehouse College and Howard University, and I went back for my 10-year reunion at Morehouse, and I was 32 and my business had just started. And so a lot of my classmates who have been out 10 years, I finished med school, law school, MBAs, all kinds of these professional jobs. So they were kind of into their career and starting to get, accumulate stuff and wealth. And I was really kind of embarrassed inside because at my reunion, I was just starting. My wife and I didn't know how we were going to pay the house note each month. I mean, we were struggling, and I almost felt like, damn, I failed. But by the 20th reunion, it was a different ballgame. So that's why you got to be so careful, kind of keeping up with, other people, and just run your own race.
Yeah, it seems like almost impossible to do these days because, and it's not even just the people that we see driving the nicest cars and etc., but like social media is the highlight reel. So, even if it's like, hey, I get to have lunch with my wife at, lunchtime, actually, and other people at work, that we're chasing these things that we may not have earned yet, one, or just haven't been free enough yet. So even the things that aren't the big flashy cars or the watches, how do we stay focused when it's even those simple things that we feel like we should have just as a right?
For me, it's all about who you are. Like I said, I'm very fortunate. My wife and I will be married 42 years in November next
Congratulations.
month. And we've always lived a very simple life. My wife, yes, we got nice things, don't get me wrong, but the thing that really helped me, and I always tell people this, that really helped me struggle through the tough times in business, I didn't have a lifestyle I had to feed for my wife and myself to be happy. My wife was happy with, going to get a pizza. She's still happy with just going to get a pizza, so am I. So when you don't have a lifestyle to feed, it makes life much easier in trying to build a business or just in general, just trying to build a career. But the other thing that's very important too is that you got to protect your peace.
That's the,
Trying to have all these things and do all these things while you're trying to build, it can upset your peace. And as I get older now, my peace is so important to me. I really protect my peace. And I'm fortunate enough with a wife that when I go home, 99.9% of the time, it's going to be peace at home. And usually the only time it's not because I didn't do something I was supposed to do, but that peace is so important.
You make me think about people who are successful want to be around other successful people. And so, so often how we live and are trained in our society is you have to look successful. How have you been able to navigate, when you were growing your business, trying to win contracts, but you didn't maybe wear the suit that guy wore or pulled up in the car that lady drove in? And so how do you, present yourself as somebody who's desirable to do business with if you're trying to maintain, look, I'm still gonna live below my means?
That's a very interesting question, and it's a good question. When I look back, I couldn't afford, fancy suits or anything. And it's funny, even to this day, I buy my suits online, for 75% off, if I even wear a suit anymore. I don't wear anything name brand. I went through that one stage after about 5 years in business, got a couple of tailor-made suits. And I was looking like, you spending that money and you're a construction fool. You go out there in the dirt, So I learned real quickly. I went through the tailor-made suit phase for a couple of years and stuff. And I said, man, that's crazy, man. Give me stuff I can get concrete on, dirt on, go to a meeting, kick my shoes, get the dust off.
That's right.
I'm just a firm believer. You got to remember now, I'm giving you answers from a 68-year-old man now.
Yeah.
Even though I'm an active 68, I hiked Mount Kilimanjaro last year. I'm very active with outdoors, but I've seen a lot of life now. So when I was in my 30s, I wanted, I thought, man, I wanted to flash or certain things, but I also had two kids. And my wife went back to nursing school to become a RN so we could have a steady income while I was trying to build a business. So this has been a real team effort. But I learned pretty quick, going through certain phases, I just never got into spending money on stuff that I couldn't get a return, and it's better to put money away so your kids can go to school. And then you get to a certain age, you realize, well, I want to make sure I got money that if I have health challenges down the road, you got it. And like my wife and I, we take good trips and stuff like that. We've been in the same house for 29 years.
Yeah.
That we built, nothing extravagant or nothing. And so we've just maintained a certain, what I call medium, just a good lifestyle that we enjoy ourselves, but we're not killing ourselves to have a lifestyle to be happy. And I hope I'm making sense to
No,
what I'm saying.
that made perfect sense. Perfect sense, and it was on time for me too. So I appreciate that. You talked a little bit about maintaining your peace, and I value that so much because you faced a lot of personal trauma growing
Right.
up, and you found healing through therapy and some other things, and so often as entrepreneurs particularly, and I don't this doesn't just have to be an entrepreneurial answer, so you can talk personal if you like.
Right.
When you think about the journey entrepreneurs, I'm going to ask from an entrepreneur perspective. When you think about the journey that we go through, it's like you are constantly worried about not just feeding your family, but the families of the people who work for you. And that
Yes.
is also, very pressurizing. So I think about, how do you approach leadership in business with that, those feathers or those bookmarks capped in your story?
Again, another really good question. And I'm glad you brought up about what I kind of went through childhood. I, if people want to know what that is, they can go to my Instagram page or LinkedIn or something and read more because I don't believe in triggering people. But, I dealt with a childhood trauma that nobody should go through. But in the 60s, you didn't talk about it. I buried it, hoped I could just get through it. But I was only fooling myself because it impacts you so much. And to the point in 1992, my business was 4 years old. I had a complete nervous breakdown, but I couldn't tell anybody. And I had to suffer in silence. God bless me that my business didn't fall and fail. But I share a lot about this because I want to help as many people, one, realize healing is possible. We are made to be, incredible. But more importantly, you got to get the help you need because our mental health and performance go hand in hand. And trying to be an entrepreneur and dealing with trauma and trying to act like it's not real or things didn't happen, it made it really hard for me when I look back trying to run a company and deal with my trauma in secret. And when I say secret, even for myself per se. When I had my breakdown in 92, I only got therapy to understand panic attacks. I didn't get a trauma therapist. I don't even know they really existed then to understand how this trauma. So it was 2020. I started feeling like I was having a breakdown again because I was just powering through. We have a bad habit. We power through stuff. But when you do it for 25 and 30 years, it wears you down. And finally, I went and got a trauma therapist and did cognitive behavioral therapy. And that's why I hiked Mount Kilimanjaro, was to, take myself on a challenge of dealing with all types of the triggers that trauma, brought on to me. So the one advice I would give any entrepreneur, deal with anything that's really impacting you through therapy and, whatever different type of therapy to free yourself. Because when you are free from those things, when I say free, you don't forget what happened, but you know how to manage them and embrace where you are, your performance will go to another level. Like I'm just now running my company for the first time where I feel somewhat free. And that's why I say I really protect my peace now.
That's really good. I want to go a level deeper there because you mentioned a couple minutes ago that you grew up in the 80s and 90s in your business where you didn't have to worry about social media. And now, so while you were going through that trauma, those panic attacks, you still had to show up to work, still had to put on face for your employees. Today, we've got to put on a face for social media for the employees who will see us watching our social media
Right.
as entrepreneurs. And so there's a little bit of a conundrum, a compounded conundrum, because not only do we have to show up in the office for the people who are choosing to follow us, but the people, even if they don't, it's in the office, they're watching us online. And so how do you advise us to still manage that when we got to do it publicly now?
Well, I'm gonna tell you something. The best thing I can tell you, you got to take care of yourself, and you got to be honest. You got to be transparent. For your folks to follow and really be behind you, I mean, you don't have to tell them everything, but they got to know where you are, what you feel, and what you're going through. But I'm like that with everybody who works here because I'm very transparent about where I've been through. So, like, we don't have sick days; we have mental health days. Because some days you just need a break. So why call in and lie and say you're sick? Just say I got a mental health day. I just need to chill. Some days you just need to chill.
I love that. So I want to turn this page again, so we talk a lot about when you're building the business, there's always somebody in the garage trying to take you out. There's always somebody building that new thing that's designed to replace the institutions that exist today. When you think about technology, what's happening with AI, what's happening with blockchain and all these things, what are you thinking about, and who are you putting around you to ensure that Moody can continue to be at the top of the field?
I'm keeping, I brought my son in here to make sure my computer was set up. So, he has his master's from Georgia Tech, MBA, and a degree in technology. So I try and surround myself with younger people, smarter than me, but I'm not afraid of technology. But one thing I've never done, I've never worried about my competition because it's enough to go around and I'm going to get my share. I'm a firm believer if I'm too busy worrying about what other people are doing in my industry, I'm taking the focus off the stuff I need to be paying attention to. So I'm either gonna get my share or I'm not. But if I'm worried about, oh man, this new company's coming, they doing this and they doing that. Hey, do what you do well. Keep making sure you're getting better and get the good people around you, and then let them young folks run.
So speaking of technology, how has technology changed the construction business, and what are you seeing in technology that's going to help more Black people get to where Mr. Moody is?
Okay, I was laughing about this. This August was 50 years that I came to Morehouse when I was 18.
Mm-hmm.
When I came to Morehouse, there was no desktop computers, there was no internet, no cell phones. You did your paper on a typewriter. If you couldn't type, you had to pay somebody. The computer classes we took was either Fortran or COBOL.
Wow.
When I started in my professional career as an architect, there was no desktop computers in 1981. We actually had to draw freehand, every day with a triangle and T-square. Now computers pretty much do so much of it. When I first started in business, there were not even fax machines where people could quote, send their quotes in. For those who don't know what a fax machine, Google it so you know what a fax machine is. So when I first started, there were hardly, cell phones were just coming out, but they were either in your vehicle only or the big box phone, and they were 35 cents a minute. You could easily have $1,000 phone bill, cell phone bill. Yeah. So technology has changed in ways that is incredible in my industry to help on the production side. But technology can only do so much where you're going to always need people to hang steel, finish drywall. I mean, there are a lot of parts of construction that will always be skilled craftspeople. And there was a recent article, the new millionaires are the plumbers and HVAC people.
Yeah.
So construction is an incredible industry for people who like working with their hands. They can make a really good living.
You started your business in 1988, and so I'm a believer that, the success you want is already out there. You just have to become the type of person that can capture it.
Right.
If you're aligned with that, how have you evolved from the man who started this business to the man you are today? Like, what would you tell that Mr. Moody 30, 40 years
Man,
ago?
it's the big thing is a couple, again, we all got a story, okay? But when you deal with a childhood trauma and try and act like it didn't really happen and you're wrestling with that, if I had to go back and do it again, I would tell myself to believe in myself more. Also, I grew up in the 60s, so I never saw a black architect till I was 17, and I only knew one. I didn't meet my first major black builder till I came to Morehouse and met Mr. Russell. So I only saw one black architect and one black builder until I was in my 20s. So what I really realized, we are what we see. And if you don't, that's why it's so important that people of color and women of color are in key positions in different things, because if you see things, and a lot of us doing it,
Yeah.
if you see people who look like you doing things, you believe more that you can. But if you see one or two, for me, because I limited what I thought I could do, because I've said, well, we just only go to a certain point because I've never seen it. And I think that's a part that is so important, that I think technology and the internet does is very helpful, is when our kids and young people can see more people who look like them doing some incredible stuff, because it does inspire you. But if you never see people who look like you doing things, it's hard. And many of us, especially in my generation, we were the first or one of the few in many things. So that's another set of baggage we all carry. Like, we cannot mess up, we can't screw up, because we'll hurt those who
That's
come
right.
behind us. And it's probably still true for some of y'all in the technology and other world, people of color. So wearing a mask is hard, and carrying that extra weight is hard.
You mentioned, starting a business with limited capital early in this conversation, and so many of our businesses are cash deprived, especially at the early onset. What are some practical steps you've learned that can help? If the money's not flowing in fast, how do we continue to grow and be able to provide services when there's a need there for capital?
Well, I think the one thing I see that's more, but it doesn't happen a lot to people, businesses of color, but a lot of people are raising money that I didn't even think uh, could it do. I mean, I'm looking at people raise 10 and $20 million for startups and all kind of stuff. I mean, my wife and I started with a couple of grand we borrowed, and it's when you start off undercapitalized, I don't know if you ever get comfortable that, regardless of how well you do, because you know what it's like to just never have enough to even go. And so it's a lot of mental stuff that you have to adjust to. But I'm glad to see how people are able to raise capital now. And I wish more of us would get people to invest in us who've earned it and show they can give a good product and then give a good return to investors.
To that end, is it so? There's this conversation of, hey, do I own 100% of something small, or a little bit of a percent of something really really big? Can you speak to that? Because so often we want to maintain all of it. We want to control it all.
Well, I use the stock market for my investments, but I think I couldn't have a partner. Not because I'm difficult to work with. I just wanted to run my own show. I mean, Michael Jordan was going to invest in my company in the early 90s. I still got the picture where he signed congratulations and good luck to our construction company. At the last minute, I went to his financial guy and turned him down. He said, "You're the first person to ever turn him down." Now, I said I turned him down because I wanted to know what I could do on my own. But about 8 months later, I actually had my breakdown. And when I think back, people didn't understand that, and I might have lost my business. They might have said, "Hey, you're so messed up. We got to take over." So The other thing about partnerships, I think they're great as long as you got all the rules and agreements laid out in front. That's got to be real clear. I've just heard so many horror stories where people didn't do the paperwork like they should have in front, and then when one of them needed to get out or more cash call, it can create problems. But I think if you have the right setup, the right, each person knows the role they're playing, I think you can have incredible businesses with multiple people invested, but everybody got to know their role in the deal.
Two more before I let you go, because you said something about paperwork that made me think about, when you've done a lot of business with governments, local governments, state governments, et cetera, some really, really big projects, Turner baseball field, Phillips Arena, Coca-Cola, right. Mercedes-Benz, like some beautiful stuff. And a lot of times when we try to go get those big contracts, since you mentioned paperwork, so many of our businesses, too many of them, I should say, don't have the paperwork ready because those people need to see documentation. Can you talk about the impetus, or talk about the things that we need to get right in order to go secure big contracts like that?
Well, first of all, you got to have your internal house in order as far as like accounting, marketing, and construction, your project managers, good estimators, and know how to put that together. But I might not have a partner in CD Moody Construction, but I do a lot of joint ventures where us and other companies form a relationship, form a separate company, and go after big projects. So to get those big projects, you also got to be willing to join resources and companies with other companies who are like-minded, who want to see you be successful and allow you to really grow. And that's how you do it. Or you find clients who want to see you grow and give you those opportunities. But the only way you can really scale, you got to have people who are bigger than you, who are willing to help you get opportunities and help you grow on it.
Last one is, you do a lot of community engagement, and I'm interested in the role your community work has helped in your success.
I just think that's mandatory. I think part of being in business, we have a responsibility to give back to our community. I try and help as many young entrepreneurs with advice. I can't get to everybody who reaches out, but I do my best. That's why I have a pretty big social media presence to try and get information out. I definitely talk to students about the beauty of construction, the great lifestyles you can have in construction, the amount of money you can make in construction. And I also speak a lot to people who've dealt with the trauma I've dealt with. And I really try and set an example. We all gonna get knocked to our knees, but we're all stronger than we realize, and we will get up. And I'm a firm believer that God has created all of us to be awesome. We just got to believe it and not be afraid, get the help we need, and then just go for it. Because life goes quick. I mean, I'm 68. I remember coming to Morehouse 50 years ago like it was yesterday. Atlanta it just reached 1 million people when I came. And Maynard Jackson had only been the mayor for a year, and Jimmy Carter was getting ready to run for president.
Wow.
So I've seen Atlanta in ways that and I was a MARTA bus driver the summer of 1977. MARTA used to hire college students to relieve the vacation and bus drivers.
Wow.
So my best summer job I ever had was driving MARTA, and I drove a different route every day, and bus fare was 15 cents.
That's the story.